Hi, I'm Pat Kiernan. Glad you could be with us for today's edition of Pat's Papers. We go through the nation's newspapers to bring you the highlights. Here's our top story today. One of the big stories the papers will track today is one that's likely going to play out exactly as we have expected for the past few days. Hillary Clinton will indeed be Barack Obama's nominee for Secretary of State. Clinton and Obama are on the front page of USA Today. The cover story asks, can she form the sort of close relationship with Barack Obama that's necessary to give her credibility as a diplomat? The announcement will come in Chicago, the Chicago Tribune. Also looking at other national security team members, the Tribune writes that Obama appears to be determined to keep them in line. Advisors say he believes the Pentagon has become too strong in the Bush years. Another Obama story in the Tribune this morning. This one's a feature on the family roots of Michelle Obama. She's a descendant of a South Carolina slave named Jim Robinson who lived on a plantation in the mid-19th century. He won his freedom after the Civil War. Reports continue to flow in from Mumbai. The Washington Post among the papers leading with the follow-up coverage after the terrorist attacks there. The Post reports there is still little certainty about who the terrorists represent, but officials and police are starting to get a clearer idea of how the terrorists operated. It's believed these young men arrived at the docks in central Mumbai by inflatable boat and then caught taxis to their destinations. The Wall Street Journal with more on this first night of the terror attack. A front-page map shows a timeline of how this relatively small group of terrorists moved through the city. The story is also noting that public anger is beginning to cloud India's relationship with its nuclear-armed neighbor, Pakistan. And there's an editorial in the New York Times today running under the headline, "The Horror in Mumbai." The Times says it's important that Washington use its influence here to urge the Indians and Pakistanis to step back from the brink. Back to the Wall Street Journal for a story about the U.S. economy, a better-than-expected start to the holiday shopping season. It is supposed to be a year where shoppers are cautious, but the story says unprecedented doorbuster prices prompted people to spend more this year than they did last year. In the New York Times, the holiday shopping story is on the front page. The headline, "Deep discounts draw shoppers, but not profits." Also from the Times, got to admit, I found this story a little bit disturbing as a TV news anchor. It is about a trend for local anchors across the country. The Times says more TV stations are putting inexperienced or relatively inexperienced anchors in front of their newscasts rather than paying the higher price for a familiar local veteran. And the Times reporting on a trend in education. American students are going overseas for college more often. The example here, St. Andrews in Scotland. A decade ago, this school had only 200 American students. It has 1,200 now. From California, LA Times coverage of the Space Shuttle Endeavour landing at Edwards Air Force Base. It was diverted from Florida because of stormy weather after its mission to restock the International Space Station and fix the space station's solar panels. Also in the LA Times this morning, yet another remarkable twist in the trial of music legend Phil Spector. His own lawyer is attacking his character, claiming Spector is a gun-obsessed boor with a mouth filthier than a truck stop restroom. His lawyer says he is equally violent towards men and women, intended to undermine the prosecution's case about a pattern of violence toward women. In a story that's being picked up around the country, George Bush has pardoned a Missouri man, Leslie Collier, who was found guilty 12 years ago, responsible for the deaths of 12 bald eagles. He was fined $10,000 to turn in his guns following a mishap where poisoned bait intended to kill coyotes ended up killing the eagles as well. To the New York Daily News now, the front page headline, Plaxico laughed. Plaxico Burress of the New York Giants turned himself in today on a gun charge after shooting himself accidentally in the leg with his own gun on Friday. His teammate Brandon Jacobs said Burress was seeing some humor in the fact that he shot himself. The Daily News with some excerpts from Britney Spears' interview with Glamour magazine. As the story points out, she has gone a year without a public meltdown now. Remarkable after her track record a couple of years ago. She's got a busy day tomorrow. She turns 27 and has timed her new album release to go along with that. One cannot speak so much of a turnaround for another pop music disaster. Amy Winehouse's husband says it's all his fault that she's a mess. He says he introduced her to heroin and crack, and he says he will leave her if that's what it takes to save her. Medical news from the New York Post, and this seems appropriate that this new technology is being used in a bustling city like New York. For the cancer patient in a hurry, a hospital has the Rapid Arc radiation treatment device, a big improvement over the old way of doing this radiation treatment, and as a bonus, it performs the typical radiation treatment in just 75 seconds. The old machine took almost 20 minutes to do the same thing. Finally, in papers across the country, as seen here in the Kansas City Star, the annual calculation for the cost of the 12 days of Christmas, you know the routine. they go out and figure out, well, what if you really bought 4 calling birds, 3 French hens, 2 turtle doves, and a partridge in a pear tree, along with everything else in the song? Even in a down economy, the cost is up almost 11% compared to last year. And that's our look at what's in the nation's newspapers this morning. I'm Pat Kiernan. Thanks for joining us. Go to patspapers.com, where you will find the complete list of all of the stories we featured today, along with links to the individual newspaper websites.